Joining us this morning, Titania Jordan.
Tatiana Jordan. Did I get the name right? Jordan?
Titania.
Titania. Okay. All right.
It's Titania Jordan.
Hi everyone, I am here with Dave Burns, David if you're more formal, Vice President of Network Technology at QTS. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And expand on what that title means.
It's funny, it morphed. When I came to QTS, we didn't have a bridge or a group that bridged between our product, operations, and sales. And so the leadership came to me and said, well, we need to form this new team called Engineering and Architecture. And they were in the process of doing it, and so they needed a leader for it. So my background in sales, engineering, and also being an operator previous life as well just made sense. And we run a small team of, well, right now we're down to 12, but we've had up to as many as 15 architects, ranging in various technologies. So don't get tied up in the network piece of it, because I have guys focused on, guys and gals focused on cloud, on network, on security. We cover the gamut. We try not to be too deep so they're not too specialized, but everybody has what I call a hobby technology.
I love that.
So where they're specialized in a certain area, but in our world today, you can't be just a network person or a cloud person. You have to know a little bit about everything, but deep in a few.
Awesome. And for those out there watching who don't know what QTS is, tell us briefly, what is QTS?
It's hard to be brief with QTS. But the QTS is actually a data center company that spawned, and we fall in what we call a REIT state, which is Real Estate Equity Trust. So basically, our CEO, founder, Chad, came in and found these massive facilities, some data centers already, some just old manufacturing facilities, and he surrounded himself with very talented people to go build world-class data centers. And so that's what we do. We build world-class data centers with partners, we run them, we sell co-location services to them, and then on top of that, we have managed services within our facilities. And then a few years back, we bought a company that was a cloud company, Carpathia, now a QTS company, and they have integrated with us over the past 2 years to one QTS, and we feel like we have all three technologies covered well, whether it's co-location services, managed services, or cloud. And we have a really strong team across the country, locations around the world. So that's as brief as I can be about
That's
QTS.
great. That's great. And I've had the honor of actually being on site and seeing that like mile-long hallway. It's insane.
Well, and each facility is unique in its own right. We try to build to a standard, but when you come in sometimes to take over legacy data centers or build from scratch, you're going to have uniqueness in every site.
Yeah.
We pride ourselves on the standards that we build in there, but we also, every site is unique, and not just in facilities, but people.
Right.
You know, people in New Jersey are going to be different than people on the West Coast and the way they manage their facilities, the way they manage their time, and those are good things. We think that builds our culture. That's
awesome. And the security, whew, is on lockdown. That's a whole nother.
We try to hit all aspects of security, and we pride ourselves on security. We actually hired the first CISO in our space about 1.5 years ago, and he's come hit the ground running. I partner with him quite a bit and try to support him as much as possible. But security from physical up to virtual, and then with our customers, you know, data integrity is a big deal. So yeah, we take that very seriously.
Absolutely, and we'll talk more about that. You know, this is living on YouTube. So, you know, YouTube being the second largest search engine beyond Google, there's of course the CIOs and CEOs that are going to be looking for this interview and really gleaning some high-level data from it. But there also might be, you know, let's say a 12-year-old out there who's just getting interested in this.
Right.
So can you distill down, like if you're talking to an elementary school class, what is a data center?
So, funny thing is, I speak to elementary schools about
Nice.
cybersecurity. So,
Nice.
that's one of the questions I get is,
Yeah.
what's a data center?
Yeah.
Most kids and most non-technical people get the cloud. They get that there is a cloud and that my data is in a cloud. So when I do tours or I talk to audiences about data centers, I say, well, what you know is the cloud is in my data center.
Yeah.
Or in our data
It's not
center.
actually in the cloud. It's a real live thing in a place that is an actual thing in place.
Well, and data centers aren't going to advertise out where and what they are. They try not to.
Right.
Because of the bad guys that are out there.
Yeah.
If they target them, they could take significant companies down because they're all in the same places. Yeah. And we have disaster recovery for that, but that's a whole nother topic. With regard to data centers, the best thing I say about cloud and data centers to the younger audience is we are someone else's. You want to move your data to someone else's computer. We're that computer. We have multiple servers within. Thousands of servers in our data centers. We can secure those environments per company, per service. It's all isolated there, and then that data is secure and protected. We have certain regulations that we have to adhere to in a data center that a private data center might not. And that's why we go through certain audits and certifications, whether it's federal, whether it's healthcare. That's what a data center is supposed to do.
It's fascinating. It's like Pentagon level stuff. It is or
cool.
beyond, actually.
I call it death by data.
Yes, yes. And again, for that audience that's just kind of getting interested in the world of tech but not super familiar with it like we are, what sort of companies, like if I'm a mom and pop accounting firm, all the way up to a Google and a Facebook, right?
Right.
And what data, what is the data that you have? What is the data that you're securing?
Well, the data is not always our data. So there's data on the wire when it comes to, as we say in the tech world, regardless of if something's connected to the internet.
What do you mean by on the wire for those watching?
Yeah, that's a good point. So computers talk in bits and bytes,
Okay.
right? In bits and bytes, data rides on those bits and bytes. And so bits and bytes are connected via those cables, and therefore data is on the wire or the
Got
cable. And often people think everything's wireless now. Well, yes, true, but eventually it has to physically be cabled somewhere somehow. It's simple. I always explain it to my kids, everything's mobile. Well, it gets to the mobile tower, but once it gets to the mobile tower, it has to get back physically somehow, some way, if not via another wireless entity. And usually that is back to what some call a POP or a head end. But those are mini data centers in my view. And our larger data centers aggregate that data, and what we are obligated to do with that data, our fiduciary duty, is to protect it, to make sure that any intellectual property for ABC company is theirs. When I talk about cybersecurity, I think Snapchat is a big popular thing amongst.
Yes.
And I'm always hesitant to remind the youth out there, and even the young adults, that just because it's posted to Snapchat and it has a time that it goes away, it is now Snapchat's intellectual property. You can argue that upward, down, sideways.
All around.
All around. But if you look at your user agreement, when you upload your photos, it is now their property.
Yeah.
And it might disappear to you, but it's still cached somewhere, and it's usually in a data center like mine. Now, who has access to that? The youth usually ask next, and it depends. If it's a managed service that we as a data center company manage, we manage where that data goes, the flow of it, but we don't look at it. We are obligated not to look at
Right.
it. AI is a big thing. You mentioned that earlier in our side conversation. And that's artificial intelligence. There's a big element of technology just starting to grow around AI, and I think colleges are even discussing it around software engineering, and how can we glean that data that's in using AI to use it towards our advantage in the business or to protect us. That's a new world we're entering in the data center, and It's a buzzword right now. There's a lot of people talking about it that claiming they can do it, and then there's some that are talking about it that are really trying to get to where they can glean that data.
Well, on a completely like going off the rails on the crazy train side conversation, I just read an article about how Facebook chatbots started communicating with each other in their own language that they made up.
Right.
So that's a whole nother level of wow. You know?
It reminds me of, I don't know, those of us who have kids, when kids are little, we always say that they speak different languages.
Yes.
It's garbled, right?
It's garbled.
But they understand each other. It's almost like, I equate
they
it to
communicate
that.
for efficiency, right?
Exactly.
It's like we found a way to communicate that just makes more sense to us and helps us get to where we need to go faster than the formal English structured sentence.
And it's proprietary for Facebook, right? You're going to see more and more of that. We, in the network world where I grew up in, and I say grew up in, but come up through, we had various protocols that, you know, A and B end of a connection talk to. That's the same thing. They work at different protocols because it's a standard. The next thing that will morph out of that probably is there's probably already standards bodies that are talking about the machine language and what is the language for machines.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. Technology is the coolest.
It's evolving. I think the youth and the generation behind me and even behind them are growing up so technology is a part of their life.
Yes.
Whereas you and I, and not to show our age, but we grew into technology as it evolved, and we're seeing it morph from small to huge.
I am so thankful to be part of the generation that started with handwriting, you know, and ended with typing and built with Legos, and then now, you know, CAD. And we have that unique perspective, you and I, that nobody else in history can or will ever have. And that's, I think that's a major differentiator for people like us.
I think the disadvantage we had is when we wanted data, it's an advantage probably because of how we were raised and we came up. We had to go research it a lot harder, differently. I mean,
card catalog and the library, like it was not a Google search away.
Right. And I joke with my kids all the time as they grow up and as the youth go into college, they're researching and they're qualifying for colleges, seeing if they have scholarship available. It's amazing the data that's available, and I love that I'm a part of that technology group that's enabling that data, because I grew up in small town Ohio where your guidance counselor was your source of information. Right? And God love her, she could only focus on a few, and she focused on the top 10 usually in a class of 250. Wow. So what happened to that 11 through 100 who were good students, but they just didn't reach that top 10? They had to go find this book of scholarships and, you know, use their own ambition to go. Now those same kids, they have access to the same thing that the top 10 had, because the data is there.
Technology is the great equalizer.
And so everybody says, well, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, you just got to be that much more ambitious than the next person.
Yeah, it's you know, on one hand, it's really cool that we were a part of that, but on the other hand, it's almost unsettling, because it's like, wow, like these kids coming out of college are already like on par with us technologically in some ways, and so they can scale much faster and learn much faster and are just more familiar with things that we're like, huh. So it's just such an interesting time to be alive. I want to go back to the Snapchat real quick, because not only does that data live, you know, somewhere, but just because it goes away on your phone doesn't mean somebody didn't screenshot it, right? And then that lives on their phone and then their iCloud and on another server. So it's way bigger.
And there's data in there, and I think you and I talked about this prior to this interview, but I can't reinforce enough that the security community has grown, and it's done a great job. We have some great advocates out there in the security community. But one thing that I can't repeat enough is that photos, those things that you upload, they have location identifiers.
Yes.
They have data within the data. And even, because I don't know how many times we've all downloaded applications and they ask you these questions.
Yeah.
People just
Allow,
say yes, allow them.
Boom, 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 I just want to play.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is now you've allowed that application that might be cool to you, but you don't know really what it's doing in the background, what programs it's running in the background, can extract your contacts, can extract your GPS location. And there's ways that we can go stop that by saying no for one, and then just turn off location services. But then now we're inconveniencing ourselves because we can't leverage some of the cool widgets that are a part of that. And people are like, well, so what? They know where I was. Well, you know, it's not always about your immediate friends, but your friends of friends, or the data that's out there that will tag you in a location. Because if I'm a security zealot on the bad guy side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn things about you. I'm going to do what we call human engineering or social engineing.
Reverse engineering, right?
And if I see things, I mean, you see it, we talked about it, I forget the name of the show, but there was a show recently on TV where people were to go in the Southeast and get lost and go off the grid. And they had snapshots of former executives and cybersecurity people that were in the background doing things like trying to hack them and find them. That's amazing to me, and I love that they did that because that's the truth.
Right.
I mean, if you're really targeting someone or a group, you're going to look at behaviors. You're going to look at what's the most common thing people use as passwords: their favorite sports teams, their kids' names,
birthdays.
their pets' names. I mean, and they'll use it in combination. But there's AI is coming up, so you plug in these variables and it will run all through the variables.
Oh my gosh. Note to self, go change all my passwords after this segment.
And even security professionals are guilty of the bad habits of passwords.
Password 123.
Yeah.
That is not one of mine, by the way.
That's not one the security professionals use, I hope. But they are guilty of using the same passwords for multiple things.
Yes, I know. It just makes it easier.
Just this morning on the news, I was watching how they were talking about how people have on their PCs or Macs, whatever, programs that they don't even know are installed that are setting their dormant, just gathering data. And that's why I can't, when I get on these things, I constantly say, update your virus protection, update as much as you can. Don't click on pop-ups.
Even on a Mac.
Even on a Mac.
Yeah, people feel like if they've got Mac, they're like, I don't have to worry about that. Those are PC problems, but.
Well, and there's very well-known websites. People know that people are going to Amazon, people are going to eBay, people are going to these various sites to do sales and buy and just trade things. You know, if they know that the crowds are there, there's plenty of targets there.
And data.
Yes.
Credit card information. It's
nuts. I highly recommend credit card information when it comes to, you know, people are going to use credit cards online, bottom line. But put those measures in place that notify you. There's a few well-known credit card companies that will send you text messages or pop-ups that say, hey, you just spent X amount at Y. I love that, and I recommend it. Sometimes it might be annoying, but you know what? You know
right
for sure if things are processed, if they're using them. I mean, little things that aren't probably security vulnerabilities, but like if you check into a hotel and they say that it's a certain rate, right? And they scan your card and then you get a thing notifying that it was 5 times that rate, you can quickly call them on that as well.
Yep.
So it goes beyond the security aspect of it.
That's amazing. There's probably some people watching and they're like, wait, how do I get my Mac secure? So can we put your information out there and they can maybe contact you, or you want to just go ahead and head that up now? Like, what do you do if you
I wouldn't want everybody coming to me because that's because I have my
700 emails later.
Whoa.
Thanks, Titania.
But I will give Apple a great deal of credit, and this is why I'm a Mac fan myself. They do post best practices on their support site.
Cool.
And I recommend that. I know everybody goes to the Apple stores because I can't get in them when I walk by one. There's a wait. But you can actually schedule appointments to actually meet with the professionals, and they can walk you through it. And everybody has the reason I say that is because what I do on my Mac, you do something differently.
Right. Everybody's different use
Everybody's
patterns.
different, and the people that focus on that can sit down with you and help you personalize it.
I love it.
And I don't work for Apple. It's a disclaimer. So.
Yeah, I have equal love for Microsoft. The Microsoft stores at the malls are super cool.
I haven't been in one yet.
Are you serious?
I have.
Oh my gosh, go to Lenox Square Mall, and it's really fun. Like now we're really off the rails, but we're right out front of the store. They have like the Just Dance, and like there are people going like ooh, ooh, like right in the middle
I will
of the mall
give it. Microsoft has heard loud and clear, and they are coming up on a number of aspects. So
they're great. I've got equal love for both, but I do use a Mac just because, you know, once I switched to Mac, I didn't have to get a new PC laptop every 2 years. It was
That's exactly right.
Always a problem. Right. So anyway, all right, I want to talk about a lot of things, but first let's talk about your background. You have a cool story. You didn't go like directly, you know, elementary school, high school, college, job. Like talk about that.
Well, like I had mentioned before, I grew up in a small town, Dayton, Ohio. I don't mind putting that out there. I have love for Dayton. But there, it was a blue-collar town. So graduating high school was a big achievement. And you come from big families, sometimes smaller families. And so graduated from high school, and honestly, the only thing I knew that was a reputable profession at the time was being a police officer. You know, so I went to school right away for criminal justice. But I got into 1 year of college and realized that, you know, this is tough. You know, I didn't have all the scholarships. You know, I didn't come from a lot of money. Bankroll. I mean, we're in the areas we live in Atlanta and around there's a lot of I call bubbles where people just quickly realize that, you know, money is not something that it comes easy, right? And so it's very similar. After a year of college, I realized, you know what, I can't do this thing working full time in that. So I went in the Army. Army gave me a great opportunity, and now, granted, it was a different time. We were coming towards the end of Desert Storm, so we weren't in the conflict we are now. So let me disclaimer, I don't want to push people in that direction, but the military gave me a great opportunity. And while there, I took advantage and learned and grew as an individual, and immediately got out and continued my education. And what's funny is my background is electrical. In the military, I tried to be an MP, and they told me your test scores were too high, so they pushed me away from it. And I would say they lied a bit to steer you.
What is MP?
Military police.
Okay.
So sorry, I use a lot of acronyms.
No, it's good. I'm just going to ask.
Well, what happens is, and any recruiter, any veteran, or anybody who's ever been in the military knows, they try to influence you towards your strengths. And when you're young, you don't know any difference of what's my strength, whatever. So they use tests, ASVAB and such. Fortunately, they were right with me. They steered me towards something that I was very good at, with math and electronics. And when I came out, I had an opportunity in the tech world. It was, I would say we were close to 3/4 through the tech bubble. We were about to burst. But it was fortunate enough that I got in somewhere and got into, you know, networking. And I'm going to date myself, frame relay, ATM, that type of, that was what we used for connectivity people. But that spurred into a love for not only the connectivity and network side, but also the security side. And there was a few opportunities. I went to a startup, and all this time I was working on my bachelor's degree with the support of my wife. And ended up getting a bachelor's degree from Southern Poly, now Kennesaw State. Nice. And I'm a proud member of the Industrial Advisory Board for the School of Computer and Electrical Engineering. But I graduated from there in 2004, and I literally have pictures with my oldest son. It's funny, and he graduated. He's like, "Why'd you wait so long to graduate?" I'm like, "It wasn't a choice." And then, as we know, in technology enabled me to go out and get certifications on top of that.
Yes.
And a lot of people, still to this day, it's a religious battle on certifications versus not. I recommend, if you don't have a college degree, certification programs are the best venue to get into technology. Even if you do have a degree. I speak to college graduates all the time, or college students, and I say, how do you differentiate yourself coming out of college? You are a brand, and this gets on a whole nother aspect. You have your own brand. You have to sell when you go interview. And I, as an interviewer, look for how you sell your brand.
Right.
Because if you sell your brand, you can sell what we're trying to do as a team.
Right. Storytelling.
It is. And so from there, I actually was fortunate enough to land at a large company that I'm no longer with, but they're a partner now, Cisco Systems, through certifications, through my degrees. And they gave me an opportunity through their leadership programs to go through an MBA.
Wow.
So I did that.
What a door, man.
And you know, it is. It's opportunity. It's doors that people say that, oh, you were lucky. You're in the right place, right time. But you know what? If you show the ambition, the drive, people will open doors for you.
Absolutely. You worked your tail off.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
And you have supportive family doing that as well.
Yep.
In that journey, I wrote a book on intrusion prevention systems. That's my love for security.
Woo! Can we link to that? Can you
Yes,
buy that on
we can.
Amazon? Awesome.
You can
We will
go to
do
Amazon. The book's a little dated because it's it was tied to a certification track, certification track. And so what I've done in all that is I've mapped out my own path. You know, coming up out of college and even before that, and even in the military, people were like, well, you got to follow XYZ path. You got to pick a path. You know, I tell young people all the time, and I think the generation behind mine, the millennials, and I know they get all the negative, but I will give it to them. They have created their own paths. They have created their own opportunities, and I admire that. And I think the generation after that is called founders. That's what I'm hearing rumors. I don't know what they're founding, but they are truly creating paths because they're taking technology they're learning as a youth and helping their careers in their brand. So, and I think we talked. My next journey right now is I just jumped into a master's in software engineering because, you know, I'm not ignorant to the fact that the world is changing. It's a software-driven world. For somebody who spent 20 years working in networks and security, I'm tired of being in rooms with programmers who are telling me how to build my networks.
Right.
So I'm like, you know what, if I can't beat them, if I can't change them, I'm gonna go learn how they think so I can manage them, so I can work with them.
Yes.
And for my business, so I can help my customers.
That's smart. So smart. How far into that journey are you?
I just got into it. So
wow.
I think the program is built for 2 years and I'll be finished. I had looked into PhD programs and such, but if anybody who's ever looked into a PhD program knows you can't work and do those to do a reputable PhD program. But some people will argue with that you can. Godspeed, because there's a lot of research behind that, and there's a lot of people who've been through those programs that will tell you you don't get paid to work on your PhD unless you're very fortunate. So, but that's been my journey. And like I said, I don't mentor and coach anybody to follow my path. I say pick your path and don't let anybody tell you can't. That's a thing we have in my house with my boys is you don't tell, if people say you can't do something, if it's not for safety and health reasons, find a way. You're
more incentivized to prove them wrong.
Exactly.
Not out of spite, but just like, I absolutely can.
Exactly.
There's a will, there's a way. I want to pull up my notes here and move on to the cloud, which we touched on earlier, but in our conversation offline, we talked about private versus public versus hybrid. So give us your thoughts on that.
So there's always going to be a need for all of them. And I think right now the industry is evolving to what is called a hybrid, which is a mix of public and private. And people go, what do you mean by hybrid? So fundamentally, public cloud is what's out there and anybody has access to it. Private cloud is basically I own it or a company owns it and they let a group of users have access to it. A hybrid cloud has something that spawned from users in both groups needing to access. You know, they want to move workloads or they want to move data from private to public, or in some forms we call hybrid clouds, QTS, our form of a hybrid cloud is what we're really focused on is hosted private clouds, because we think that's where things are going. And I agree with that as well, because what it's come down to is companies like AWS are so big, companies like Google are so big that companies want their own cloud, but they want to be able to access the Googles, the Amazons. So what we offer is we can host their environments so that they can host a cloud, but still pull workloads from the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsoft Azures. But that's the three as fast as I can explain it, given that I know we're on limited time. So, but I will say the challenges with all of those are underlying, like we go back to the security threats with all of them. And the other thing is who manages them. These clouds are evolving because there's technology underneath the hood of all these clouds that needs people or intelligence to support it and manage it. And there's opportunity there for the younger generation or even the older generation who want to change careers.
Yes.
Because it's just like as Amazon moves retail and grocery shopping to the cloud, the people who were managing that in the store have expertise in that.
Yes.
You enable them with technology, now they can enable the technology no longer in the store, but in the cloud.
That's right. That's right. We'll have to have a whole nother show about that. Let's talk about IoT. IoT is a huge thing, right? Everybody's talking about it. Not everybody really knows what it means. And specifically, how does it impact the data center space?
Sorry. Now, IoT is a buzzword. It's Internet of Things. And I just got done explaining this to an older generation of people I was hanging out with recently. And basically, if it has access to the internet or it has access outside of its single device, it is technically, and it's on the web. If you can get to the web, it is now a part of what we call the World Wide Web and a legacy.
On the wire.
It's on the wire. It's Internet of Things. In the data center specifically, and when I speak, I say we have the best case study for data for IoT, and within our 4, 5, 6, 7 walls within our data center. I mean, we have multiple walls.
Like
we have functions, and each function is managed either remotely or physically. And in most cases, they now have IP addresses, which is what allows things to get to the internet. And if they do, now they are accessible. They are Internet of Things. So whether it's our boilers, our power supplies, our battery backup systems,
Our refrigerators.
Yes, our refrigerator, everything will, and all that stuff applies in a data center. I want to keep cooling, right? Our air conditioning units are key to keeping the environments cool
And safe.
So Internet of Things is going to be a game changer, and is already a game changer. I think if you, I saw somebody speak recently and said, just do an audit of the things you have in your home that are connected to the internet. And they say, it used to be 3 or 4 devices connected to that. No, it's up at 30 plus. If you have 4 people living under a roof, each has a device, a phone, each has an iPad or a Microsoft notebook, they're now connected. And then you have all your TVs are Wi-Fi connected. You have PlayStations, Microsoft Xbox.
Oh my gosh.
Go through and count it. And then what's amazing to me, and people discount this, is the intelligence you have in your home. Nest thermostats.
Ring doorbell.
The Ring doorbells.
Yep.
All those things are now connected. I did an audit recently. I have 37 devices or Internet of Things within my home.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. After this, I'm going to go home and do that same audit. That's fascinating. David, you have a wealth of knowledge. It's very specialized, and QTS is just so expansive and an important player in this space. For people who want to learn more and connect with you afterwards, how should we have them do that?
Well, if you want to learn more about QTS, we'd love to have you in our data centers, whether you're small, medium, large company, qtsdatacenters.com. Just go to our website. We have contacts there as well. You can reach me, for those that are on LinkedIn in the professional world, you can reach me on LinkedIn.
Cool. David Burns.
It might be under Dave Burns.
Okay.
LinkedIn.
We will find the link, thanks to the internet, and we will pop it below in the description.
Perfect. And then I would say, as far as reaching out to me, I think outside of LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram too. I'm not a Twitter. I'm sorry, I haven't joined that group yet. I'm an anti-Twitter tweeter. And I think today's world proves why you want to be anti. But reach out to me that way. I also, through QTS Data Centers, they have a way to reach out to me as well, and also through 3CI, they're a great partner. So happy to have conversations. We love participating in a community, things like this that allow us to get our word out, because we want the QTS brand out there, And and I personally have my mission is to make everybody smarter around cybersecurity, around network technology, and just thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you so much, David Burns, QTS VP of Network Security.
Network technology.
Network technology. Let me try that again. David Burns, QTS VP of Network Technology.
Yes, ma'am.
So awesome to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.